Okay.
Recording is on.
There we go. We're recording. So please go ahead and restate that, Sean Marquez.
Should I do it or should Toastmaster do it?
You do it, my friend.
Okay. So the resolution is that the Prime Directive is a morally justified general order of Starfleet.
And for the positive or pro side, I'd like to introduce Aaron McDowell. Aaron, you're going to go ahead and take pro, which means you get to go first. And that leaves for Brian con. Okay.
Okay.
I hope that works out for everyone. And this is going to be a lot of fun. So, Karen, please explain to us again about the time. I do understand there's green, yellow, and red. I just don't know how much time each person gets fully. Is that 5 minutes in total, or is it 10?
It's 5 for each side, unless you want us to modify the time where it would be like 3 per side, because then that would be 9 total per side, because there's a set it up round, a add to the conversation round with more information, and then a wrap it up call to action conclusion round for the third round. So depending on how long you want the debate to last, whether it's 9 minutes or 15 minutes, we can modify accordingly.
Well, basically, it's about 3 o'clock. And so I think this is the perfect time to get started. And then it can run for however long it needs to with the rules that have already been stated. Excellent. I don't think that the whole event will last more than an hour. And of course, after we're done with the debate, we can have just a free-for-all discussion again as to, you know, what people think and how it's gone for everybody. I wanted to give a certain amount of time for the event to happen so that people can pop in and pop out and such. So fantastic. I think this is wonderful. And yeah, gentlemen, if you're ready, we can get started.
Real quick, should we also introduce the AHA counter and the evaluators?
Of course.
And the timekeeper, that's another role, right?
Yes.
Yes, please, everyone introduce yourselves to those who are watching and participating.
Very good. I am your timekeeper. As stated before, you'll see the green card at 3 minutes, the yellow card at 4 minutes, the red card at 5 minutes. You then have 10 seconds to finish. Otherwise, our fine Jitsu Master host will mute you.
Yes.
I can't wait to mute a few people. There we go.
He's ready to play whack-a-mole right now. Excellent. And did you have evaluators already set up, or did you want me to keep track of Oz and do the evaluations?
I can take on either. I don't think we have a set in stone who our evaluators or our AHA counters are.
Okay, excellent. So in our debate club, it's we shouldn't do it here, but in our debate club, typically the debater from the other side evaluates the person that they just argued against, and that takes a little finessing because you're evaluating their performance and how they landed versus their content, which you may or may not agree with. So, Sean, if you would like to evaluate Aaron and his 3 speeches, and then there's
sure.
Admiral, would you care to? Admiral Phil, would you like to be an evaluator for Brian?
I will certainly try. My connection is a little off.
Okay. And then this is...
So what is it you want me to do now?
I'm sorry. Do you want me to evaluate?
Evaluate Brian.
Wait, there are 2 Seans.
Brian, okay.
What's that?
There are 2 Seans. Derek, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Sean M.
Okay, that's me.
Yeah, Admiral Sean. Is that fair? No. Wait.
That's I think that's skipping a few ranks.
Oh, Phil. Sorry, Admiral Phil. Okay, Admiral Phil. is Brian, and then Sean is Aaron.
Which Sean?
Sean in.
Huh?
Me.
The one that's been to a couple of Toastmaster meetings.
Oh,
And it doesn't have a picture.
And that doesn't have a picture. Yes.
okay.
The invisible Sean.
Invisible.
Yeah, I
Wait,
guess.
is my video not on?
No,
Your video is not on, Sean.
you're
That's-
incognito.
Huh. I thought I had my video on this whole time.
Yeah, you're transmitting from a black hole.
Is that the same for everyone? I thought, like, because I'm seeing my video on my end.
Yeah, I can't see it.
No.
You're a lovely pink ass. It's a power color.
Huh, I
How many
don't.
pictures keep coming in and out? Interesting.
Yeah.
Ow.
We have the other video. Okay. All right. So we have Aaron is for the resolution. The prime direction is a morally justified general order of Starfleet. The con debater is Brian. The evaluator for Aaron will be Sean. The evaluator for Brian will be Admiral Phil. The whack-a-mole muter is Derek, apparently.
Hi.
Whack-a-mole? Okay.
And let's see, the fellow Jitster, who is also a Sean, bearded Sean. Is it okay to call the bearded Sean?
Sure.
The bearded Sean. Do you feel like being an awe counter? That's a very objective thing. Where
what?
you don't have to take any sides.
A what counter?
Awe counter.
So if somebody talks like this and doesn't quite, be clear,
You can count those.
that's what you're counting.
He's the king of Oz. That's him being the king of Oz or a sewing machine. That kind of thing.
So do I write this down on
I love
paper? And how do you
Yeah.
want me to do this? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
usually you write it down on paper.
All right.
Listen for the Oz. If you want to get a special, especially large gold star, Oz, ums, ers, nos, but Oz are what we're shooting for.
Okay.
Yeah, very cool. Bearded Sean, thank you for your service.
Sure.
All right. And we are ready to commence. We have for the resolution, the first speech, Aaron. Aaron, the floor is yours.
When can I begin?
We start timing when you first start talking. You're the speaker.
Okay, I just want to make sure. All right. The Prime Directive. Now that is something that is brought up with every Star Trek series and movie since 1966. Now, however, everyone asks, what is the Prime Directive? We all know captains who don't follow the Prime Directive, such as Kirk, for instance. But that's another story. The Prime Directive is around in the Star Trek universe to stop the influence of Starfleet from contaminating other cultures' development. In many ways, it is essential due to the fact that we should allow these cultures to develop at their own rate, discover warp drive on their own, allow their technologies to develop so that by the time they have warp drive, they're ready for it. I plan to prove to everyone here today that the Prime Directive is not just needed as a general order. It is essential for Starfleet and the Federation to have the Prime Directive in place. That is all.
Hey guys.
Our next speaker against the resolution setting up his debate is Brian. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I don't think anybody would disagree with the fact that the Prime Directive does serve a function and a valuable function in certain cases. But the thesis I intend to prove and argue before you today is the fact that the Prime Directive is applied far too broadly and far too harshly to be a proper moral justification. As a result of the rather extreme way in which the Prime Directive is both phrased and enforced, and expected to be enforced by Starfleet, there are thousands, if not millions or even billions of beings in the galaxy who have just as much of a right to exist as we do, that are subjected to fates that they do not need to be subjected to. And it is a moral failing on our part to do good, to not do good in a situation in which we can do good, in which we have the opportunity and the ability to do good. Then we have the obligation and the responsibility to do good. There are certainly situations in which the Prime Directive may be applicable. Nobody here is going to make the argument. I certainly am not going to make the argument that we should show up to every planet, decide which particular nation state we like the most, and then hand them weapons that are far beyond their level of technology. That is a recipe for disaster. I think everyone would agree, but that is only the most basic and straightforward application of the Prime Directive. And instead of just applying it to that context of a situation and then using our own sense of reason and judgment and moral duty and obligation for every one of the other 1,000 permutations that Starfleet captains encounter on a regular basis, we allow the Prime Directive to handcuff and shackle us into inaction when action could do so much more and provide such a more material benefit to all of the beings in the galaxy and to the Federation itself. That's all.
So from what I understand, that's the first round, the introductory.
Yes.
And Karen, the second part is what now? Why don't you introduce that part, and then we'll allow our next debater to take the floor.
Excellent. The next round is the rebuttal to the information that was given in that first round. So our rebuttal begins with Aaron, who is the pro on the resolution. And Aaron, and at this point, you can respond to anything that has been said by Brian, and you can introduce mitigating factors or other information that will support your cause. The floor is yours.
Sorry, before we start, should we take a before survey?
We could, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's something we do at at least the Caltech debate club, is we take a before and after survey.
Oh, that's right, with
Or
Curtis.
the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Curtis.
That's fair. Yes.
Yeah, our debate club doesn't, but
That's okay. That would be fun. Let's do that.
A survey? What does that entail? Please explain.
You vote which side you're on, and then you vote again after the debate.
Yeah. In other debate clubs, they do the survey by secret ballot twice, so that you don't have to out yourself depending on how you really feel. Because a lot of times when the debaters poll for or against and which position they are oftentimes, if they're very good debaters, they are debating a side they may not actually align with in terms of their moral compass or what they're thinking. So that's usually why it's usually in secret. But Caltech is a young club, so we just do sometimes like a voice vote. That's perfectly acceptable. Or if you want a private message, the whack-a-mole host master that you are for or against in a private message, that could be the secret ballot if you want to remain secret. And that's at your discretion, Derek.
I like the idea of people sending me a private message allowing me to know which side that they're on. That way we don't give pressure to the people who are actually debating, and the tally can still remain.
Excellent. So spend the next 20 seconds or so by highlighting Derek's video box and going down to the private message selection. It should pop up in the power color pink, and you can shoot him a for or against, and he can tally that and then share the results.
Which Derek should we message?
Is that for or against based on the opening comments or where we morally feel?
Where you actually stand on this particular issue.
And if you can,
Okay.
message the smiling Derek and not the D. That's the smiling Derek is live.
5 more seconds. Okay. Anybody having the need of more time? All set. Okay, brilliant. Our rebuttal phase begins with Aaron, who is debating for the resolution. Your rebuttal may begin. You have the floor. And you can unmute and will be far more effective. You were there and then you muted again. There you go.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so, I will admit Brian had some good points on this, but again, the Prime Directive is here for a reason. I will admit, yes, it may be a little harsh for some species and some governments, but however, there's a reason that the Federation has the Prime Directive in place, because for one, there are many races out there that are not as peaceful as.
Hey, Alex, get me a soda. Where are you going? I'll see what I can do. I'd love one. Something with caffeine. Cocos one.
There are other races that are not as peaceful as say the Deltans, for instance, that can get warp technology. And then, as an instance in say Star Trek Nemesis, if you think about it, Picard, Worf, and Data broke the Prime Directive, going on down to the planet to retrieve B4. They exposed themselves to the aliens on that world, the natives of that world, showing advanced technology with a warp-capable captain's yacht with an Argo, as well as showing off an android, or actually two. So, in there are other times, especially if you look at in Earth's history, when, such as the 1950s, when the thought of aliens coming onto our world was actually scary, or such as the Red Scare, which some people actually thought aliens were communists. That is, it's just using historical context, and I mean, especially if you think about it from a pre-warp drive civilization's end, they could perceive aliens in not a positive way, but a very negative way. In fact, it could get very violent. I mean, to be honest, if we as a species right now, if there was a big alien mothership in orbit, first thing we probably do, launch a nuke at it. First thing we do is launch a thermonuclear warhead, an ICBM at it. That is the first thing we would do. And if you look at, say, and it's not inconceivable to think that it would be something that other races would do if encountered the fact with an alien. So all in all, I'd have to say, even though yes, the Prime Directive is very, it's kind of like a one size fits all for everyone. It's there for a reason. In other words, is to make sure that the species that the Federation and Starfleet are making contact with and having diplomatic relations with are able to handle being with other races that are of the same technological development or less, but just the maturity of the species, because it took us a long time to get where we are. I mean, we've had 2 world wars and hundreds of years of religious fighting, and where we are now is amazing. So it's taken us centuries, but here we are now. That's why I am for the Prime Directive. That is all.
Excellent.
Okay. Can you give me 1 second to kick my cat, who is begging for dinner, out of the room so she does not get in the way? 1 second.
Yes.
Hey, I understand, man.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. My apologies for that.
No worries.
The Ursula.
The rebuttal phase for against the resolution is Brian. Brian, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. There, again, nobody is making the argument that the Prime Directive should never be applied. The argument that we're making here is that there are situations in which the Prime Directive hinders rather than helps in guiding us towards the morally correct action. To use the 1950s on Earth as an example, one of the nation states at the time, the United States, was going through or about to go through a pretty major civil rights upheaval and enfranchising a larger segment of its population than had access to the votes and access to equal civil liberties before. If we take that as a hypothetical, say that the Vulcans had shown up that particular day and decided that they were going to make themselves known to us. They were going to make contact with the United States and other nations at that moment in history. Some people would argue that it might have deprived us of the opportunity to do the work that was necessary, which is to essentially institute civil rights and institute genuine civil equality on our own. And that was something that we would have to achieve on our own before we could, as one species and as one planet, reach out into the stars and interact with other races like the Vulcans on an equal playing field. But I would counter that the Vulcans could have, if they had so chosen, done so in such a way that they could have ushered in and they could have helped create a transition into a more civil rights-oriented society and into the genuinely just and equal society that we enjoy today in the 24th century. That they could have, that they had it within their power. And indeed, we know this to be the case because when they did make first contact with us about 100 years later, Earth was in fact in a much worse situation, devastated by the Third World War, with hundreds of millions dead and infrastructure all over the planet absolutely wiped out. And the Vulcans chose to make themselves known to us, to make first contact, and in the years subsequent to that, did a great deal of help to humans and to the entire planet Earth that allowed us to ascend and mature and become the society that we are today. Far from being an example of the Prime Directive at its best, as sometimes people cite first contact with the Vulcans, because it just so happened to coincide with Cochrane's first work flight, I feel that first contact with the Vulcans is in fact an argument against the Prime Directive, because without the Vulcans at that moment in history, I don't believe that our civilization and our planet would be here today. And as a result, the Federation itself might not be here today. There is, to reiterate my thesis, there is a moral obligation to do good when you are capable and you have the opportunity to do good. And we already have a historical example of that in first contact with the Vulcans and with our very own planet and our very own history. We can't simply write off our obligation to do the right thing and to do good in the galaxy simply by saying that we can't foresee all of the possible consequences. That statement is true for any action that any of us take on any scale, down from our personal lives up to the fate of galactic politics. We do the best we can. We make the most informed judgments that we can, and we act. Even if we make mistakes, we act. And it is better to act and make a mistake than to not act and fail before you have even tried. To do so consigns thousands, millions, even billions of intelligent beings across the galaxy from an existence that they deserve, and an existence that we are lucky enough to reap the benefits of. And yet, if we enforce the Prime Directive overly zealously, we deprive other intelligent creatures, other intelligent beings in the universe from enjoying the existence that we enjoy. And to me, that does not seem like a moral good. It does not seem like a moral truth to follow for us. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Amazing. Both sides. Everybody, please go ahead and enter in your vote for either pro or con. Should I be telling them what the consensus was from the last time before they go ahead, Karen, or is that something I'm just keeping track of until the end of the debate?
Typically you would keep track until the end and say the first round yielded this, the last round yielded that.
Okay.
Typically. And did you want to do a final wrap-up round and then another vote, or is that the final round you want?
No, I would like to have a vote for this and then do a wrap-up round. We've got plenty of time, and both of our participants are fantastic with their arguments. They have me engrossed and listening to this debate in such a way that I'm myself thinking of different means and ideas on both the pro and con side. And for someone who likes to write fan fiction, this is helping out a great deal.
Got it. So let's take a minute and hover over the smiling Derek, the only Derek, I think the other one left. And please vote your conscience, where you actually stand on this issue. And you are either for the resolution or against the resolution. Take a few moments to privately message him. We have no Jeopardy music for this. Okay.
Hey, Karen, I sent you a little message on Facebook Messenger.
Was this about Homer Simpson's butt? Yes. Good job. Normally, if it's on Zoom, we have it in a background. It's like a virtual background that lights up like the whole color. But this is our plan B for virtual platforms like this one and GoToMeeting. It works.
Being a lifelong fan of The Simpsons, I have no I like Homer Simpson's butt. The amounts of it that we get to see within the context of the show, after being on for 30 years, there's nothing that you haven't seen, and so it's cute. It just struck me as yellow butt crack, Homer Simpson, and I try to find the humor in a lot of things. Forgive
I would
me.
never yuck somebody's yum, and I learn more about you every time we are together. Alrighty. With that and all the voting taken care of, we are in our final round. That is the wrapping it up, the call to action, and really doubling down on your side and why you're the right side and your side should prevail. We are beginning with the pro side. Aaron, take it away. The floor is yours.
You're muted.
Unmute, and it will be a lot more permanent in all of our minds.
I don't know. Sometimes I find myself more persuasive when people can't hear me. I don't know if that says anything about them or me, though.
Yes.
All right. Am I good?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, ladies, gentlemen, non-gender and non-binary species attending this debate. So, in conclusion with the Prime Directive, again, I will reiterate, there is a reason we have the Prime Directive, because it is not just for the protection of the Federation and Starfleet, but also for the galactic community in itself. The last thing that is needed is a pre-warp civilization magically getting warp drive technology and going off half-cocked around the galaxy. Especially one with militaristic ambitions. Last thing, we already have four major galactic powers that have militaristic ambitions, such as the Klingons, the Romulans, the Dominion, and the Cardassians. All four we have been at war with since at least 2100, at least the 2100s. So that's over 300 years of off and on wars and Cold Wars. Another reason we have the Prime Directive is to prevent another galactic government with militaristic ambitions to come out and wreak havoc on the galactic landscape. Secondly, we have this also to make sure cultures stay untainted by outside interference. When you have outside interference, a culture changes drastically from what it once was, from what it would develop into on its own. You gotta have, even though, yes, we don't want to be like the Borg and take away individuality and take away cultures. So in a sense, if you think about it, we should preserve the Prime Directive. History teaches us the Prime Directive, it's not just for ourselves, but it's also for the greater good of all species. That is all.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for the against the resolution side, wrapping it up with the call to action, we have Brian. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would note in my distinguished colleagues' examples that none of those 4 races, those species, those powers, was the Federation, the humans, or any Federation member responsible for developing their society or having a hand in their society before they achieved interstellar travel on their own. Yes, they are hostile, but in all of those cases, that is not the doing of Earth or the Federation. And in fact, the Prime Directive threatens to put us at a severe disadvantage against those other species and races and powers that do exist. Because the Cardassians don't have a Prime Directive, the Romulans don't have a Prime Directive, the Klingons and the Dominion certainly do not. The Dominion actively uplift and cultivates the species and planets within their control to make them stronger. Unfortunately, they don't do it in a morally correct way from our point of view. And I don't want to use the phrase fight fire with fire because I think that's too pejorative in this case, but I do think that the dynamic nonetheless exists where it is a prisoner's dilemma sort of situation. We are holding ourselves to this standard and to an unreasonably high standard, while our opponents and antagonists do not, and we put ourselves at a disadvantage against them when we could be engaging in behavior that is moral, engaging in the general philosophy of this behavior in a way that is moral and that is correct and still maintains the dignity of the dignity and the individuality and the sovereignty of these species, but at the same time strengthen ourselves through infinite diversity and infinite combinations and make us a stronger body in all respects so that we have a better chance of standing up against foes like the Dominion. If we had adopted a policy of never interfering or interacting with any species, regardless of whether they were pre or post-warp capable, prior to the Dominion War, even prior to the Earth-Romulan War, then we would not be here. We simply would not be here to have this very debates today. The Romulans would have wiped us out, or the Klingons would have wiped us out. Both would have done so within a century of Earth achieving warp technology on its own. And even if we had somehow managed to survive both of those devastating conflicts, then the Dominion would have wiped us out a century later, or the Cardassians, or any one of number of other hostile races out there who we bear no responsibility for uplifting or giving warp technology in the first place, but who are nevertheless a threat to our way of life and our continued existence and the application of what we feel are proper morals and ethics. So if there is a way to do something and we can be reasonably certain that we can do it the right way, or at least make the good, honest attempt at doing it the best way we can, then I believe we have a moral obligation to do so, not only to the beings themselves that would be the recipients of this, but also to ourselves, to our fellow Federation citizens, because we make ourselves stronger as we make these other race species stronger. And a big argument for the Prime Directive is that we cannot possibly do these things with the proper foreseeing of consequences, that we cannot possibly engage in these kinds of activities without disastrous, unforeseen, perverse incentives and side effects cropping up that cause more damage than they create, that cause more damage than problems they solve. But that simply isn't true, and it doesn't apply to any other aspect of our existence. We don't, in our personal lives, we don't keep ourselves from doing anything for fear of doing the wrong thing. We go out there and we make mistakes and we try to learn from them as best we can, and we try to improve based upon the mistakes that we make. That philosophy, the necessity of doing that for us as a species and as a federation, is no less important on the galactic scale than it is on the personal scale, at the individual level. So I think we deny ourselves improvement of ourselves in refusing to do this. We deny these other species, these other races of improvements that they could achieve. and we make ourselves weaker, and we make them weaker as well. So that's why I feel the Prime Directive needs a much more nuanced view and application of it than the very broad, black and white, inviolable sin that it currently exists in our society. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So with a final vote, let's take a minute to vote our final vote. Vote your conscience to Derek. Private message. Are you for the resolution or against the resolution?
It's not really a black and white question, is it?
No.
Yay or nay? That's it. Period. Wow. Okay.
I mean, that's that. At least that's my view. Is that it isn't a black and white question, and if I were making this argument for real on the floor of the Federation Council or whatever, that's the argument that I would make, is that there needs to be more nuance and there needs to be actual case by case thoughts given to it, because it's just to reduce a question so huge to a black and white does nobody any good whatsoever.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Jesus. Okay.
So, Bearded Sean, how did the Oz do?
Out of the what?
How did the Oz do? Did you count the Oz? Did you catch any?
No, I caught one by Aaron, but not by Brian.
Oh, I definitely had some.
Brian was pretty distinct in what he was saying. There were times when Aaron was like, kind of let me think on that. So I only caught one for Aaron. I didn't catch one for Brian.
When you start honing your sounds and what you say, you want to do anything that you can to not detract from your message. And Bearded Sean did pick up some Oz, which is great. But both sides had Oz. Both sides were self-interrupters at one point or another, where they would start a thought and then go a different direction. Both had double clutches.
I wasn't thinking of that one. Okay.
That's okay.
What is a double clutch?
What that means is you repeat a part of a phrase or a word over.
Okay.
Like I did with that first part of the sentence. That's
Gotcha.
A double clutch, and we see double and triple clutches because your brain is working faster than your mouth sometimes, and not negotiating your message, or your butterflies are not flying in formation, and your nerves getting to you.
It is non-negotiable. Kapla!
It is non-negotiable. Right. We had a couple audible detracting sounds from Aaron, and I think that was just an or an when you were trying to gather your thoughts in what were
but do I mark him for that?
We only asked you to do Oz, and I'm just giving a couple other layers that I caught just very quickly.
Okay. All right.
Well, and I will admit I got the pups distracted me too.
Yeah, I could tell when you had something else going on off camera, and if your cat walks by or if there's a dog in screen, it can not just detract the people that are trying to hear you or follow what you're saying, but it can also be problematic for the speaker. That's why we're behind a coded door and the small humans can't get to us.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we tend to do, just as a fun thing, is we tend to also have a grammarian. We didn't have like a word of the day that we were trying to use or anything like that, but we did look for especially interesting use of grammar. And for Aaron, whichever part of the screen you are in your world, but you're over here for me, I liked some of the phrasing that you used. One size fits all. Salutation. The salutation that you used was interesting because you started off standard, ladies and gentlemen, transgender and non-binary, and you started layering, and that really piqued me into what you were saying. You were being all inclusive, everybody. That was kind of cool. The culture stays untainted by outside interference. That's a very descriptive phrase. And preserve the Prime Directive. I can't read my own writing. Preserve the Prime Directive was a very stoic message that you landed on. That was very good. With Brian, handcuffs and shackle us. We dig that. It's all good.
That was a good one, Brian.
Interesting way of looking at it. All right.
If you're into that. It is better to act and make a mistake than do nothing. That's very, very specific as far as your argument goes. Overly zealous. That is a great phrase. You did use the word distinguished. You said fight fire with fire is pejorative. Your language really characterizes how emphatic you are about your argument. And I think that that was something you used very well. Sovereignty of the species. A lot of people don't understand allodial rights or sovereignty. So I was really surprised, and that really caught my attention. Foes, like the Dominion, severe disadvantage. Prisoner's dilemma, you're referring to a whole thing to unpackage in terms of what the prisoner's dilemma is. That was very cool. And you actually used a triad, which is really great in debate. And that's something that we expect of advanced debaters or people that have done this a few times. And that was when you said those races, those species, those powers. You are tripling down, and you're using that diction and cadence to really punctuate your message.
The rule of three.
Rule of three, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that worked out very well as far as that goes. In terms of time, we were warming up at first. We had where is it? If I was me, where would I be? There we go. All right. Forgive me. I write like a drunk dyslexic 4-year-old doctor, so it's
Your writing good compared to mine.
He's got the serial killer chicken scratch.
Was that also a triad?
It might be.
I think that was a quad ad. Yeah. Quadruped.
There you go. So Brian started at 217. I'm sorry, I should start with a pro. Aaron was at 139. Brian was at 217 for the rebuttal round. Aaron warmed up and he was at 418, and Brian was at 4 minutes 56 seconds. Very good. And the wrap it up call to action. Aaron was at 301, and Brian distracted the timer and was so in. He's like, crap, yellow, Simpson butt now. You were at actually 521, and we did message the whack-a-mole host, but I think he was also engaged, so you hit 521.
Thank you, I think.
Yes.
As I understand it, that was about 11 seconds over.
Yeah.
I did get the message that he was at 5:10. And I was like, what does that mean? It's not 5:10. It's not anywhere near 5 o'clock. And then I was like, right, 5:10. And so I understand that there is a 10-second grace period. And had I seen that at the onset, I still don't think I would have muted him.
That's okay. That's okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Why is it that sorry, my head just went out the floor. If Starfleet goes against this Prime Directive, why is it only being listed that you're offering them warp speed? I've never ever seen any episode or any movie where they just automatically can turn around and have the warp speed. I don't know what that's about. I've never seen that ever on the show. On any of the movies, on Star Trek, the original, I don't know about Deep Space Nine or Voyager. I think about that, but you know, I thought interrupting the Prime Directive was giving them any assistance of any kind, weapons, you know, or better ways of making clothing. I mean, whatever. They're supposed to stay away from them unless it's absolutely necessary, as far as I know.
Yeah, well, I think.
And then you only assist them to the degree that they need, and not anything else. So I mean, like. There was an episode where the Klingons were automatically offering weapons to the opposing side, and Starfleet, it really was they had to even out the odds. I don't think they did anything else. So it just seemed kind of limiting to me what you guys are looking at as breaking the Prime Directive. I didn't think it was just warp speed. I thought it would have been all kinds of things.
So first of all, just to interrupt you really quickly, thank you. That's a great question. Let's finish up with the debate, and then we can have this floor open up to discussion like that, because that is a very good question. I have an answer for it, but these two gentlemen were the ones who were debating, and I'd like for them to give you their answer as to why they limited it with this debate. But let's finish this up real quick and keep that question that Sean has in mind for answering, gentlemen, because it's very valid. Let's just wrap this up real quick because we're just about over. We're just about done. And one last thing, I would love to thank everyone who is here. This was really fun. Your arguments were intelligent. They were well spoken. They had me, both sides had me on the edge of my seat. So let's finish this up real quick and then move on to just a regular Q&A and talking about our fun.
We also have table topics if we want to do table topics.
Awesome. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, let's finish this up. Thank you.
Now, off-screen, Sean, with the little symbol, do you have some table topics already crafted, just out of curiosity?
I don't, but people who filled out the form do.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you very much for that. In Planet Toastmasters, all of our clubs have something called PI, prepared speeches, impromptu speeches, and evaluations. The table topics in Planet Toastmasters is impromptu, off-the-cuff speaking. The prepared speeches for today's debate were our two debaters because they knew what they were going to debate, but they weren't sure they didn't know which side they were going to be on. So that is effectively preparing for your remarks for your debate, which qualifies for that P. But now we're going to the E, and the E is the evaluation. So evaluations typically run 2 to 3 minutes. The timer will give you a green at 2, a yellow at 2 minutes 30 seconds, and a red at 3 minutes. We won't mute you. We might just jiggle the card if you need help. And this is Sean, who is evaluating Aaron for the pro side. Sean, your remarks.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Somebody asked me a question, or am I talking out of line? Sorry.
Oh, I'm talking to evaluator Sean, not bearded Sean. Forgive me.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Sorry for not clarifying.
It's all right.
Yeah, both sides had me on the edge of my seat. Let's see. I'm still kind of gathering my thoughts here because I have a lot of unfiltered notes. Let me scroll up. Give me a second. Actually, read my notes.
We're counting your uhs and ums, and you have the time is clicking, Sean. So let's get this going. Come on, buddy.
Well, so the way we do it, at least I've seen the evaluations, we're usually given like a minute to actually collect our thoughts, and
if you would like, Sean, evaluator Sean, if you'd like, let's give you a minute, and while we are waiting that minute for both evaluator Sean and Admiral Phil, because Admiral Phil is evaluating the con debater Brian, then we can do something else in that minute, like maybe Derek can share with us how many people initially were for the resolution.
I can do that, and just before I do, the USS Stephen Hawking uses the uniforms for the time period in Star Trek, The Next Generation. Right now, Phil is wearing his Admiral uniform from The Next Generation, and Phil, you just got that tunic. Why don't you stand up and give us a little twirl, buddy? Let's take a look at that. It looks really nice from the yoke part there, that shoulder. Stand up and see the belt. Really nice. Yeah, it looks really nice, and we're admiring it, and I sent you a little message on that. Give us a little twirl.
Nice, very nice.
That's awesome. I feel so underdressed.
It's me too.
That is amazing. Wow.
No, I got
Wow,
it.
look at the power I have. I just made an admiral do something. I just made him take a spin and twirl, and that's beautiful.
Funny.
Okay.
Well, as long as it doesn't turn into Wonder Woman, I guess that's fine.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you so much, Admiral. And
Admiral,
during the first introductory portion, the count was 6 for pro and 1 for con. I believe we'd had one other person who was in for a few moments. I know who the gentleman is behind the Domino's pizza mask. I just forget. George. So George was able to cast a vote for that particular round. I've got about there are still, I have 7 people for each round except the last. So again, in the first round, the introductory round, it was 6 for pro and 1 for con. During the second round, the whole meat and potatoes part, I had 3 for pro and 4 for con. Okay, exactly. Wow, Karen. And the last portion, I only had 4 people to give me their vote, and it was tied, even, pro and con. So there were at least 2 other people, maybe 3 other people who could have gone ahead and put in their vote. You can't do it now; it's over. But just to let you know that during that last portion, that was tied at 2-2.
Wow. That is
Okay.
that is
And personally, real quickly, before these 2 gentlemen give their evaluations, as a bystander who had nothing to do but listen, I was swayed very much by the con side of the argument, especially during the last 2 rounds, because the point that I heard made was, especially the last portion, was if our enemies are doing it, we have a certain responsibility, really, if we were the Federation, to do the same, because that gives them an advantage over us.
No.
If we can do this with the integrity that we show by having a Prime Directive, interference can be advantageous to not just ourselves, but to the civilizations that we are trying to help protect.
Down.
So that, I just wanted to go ahead and say that real quick. And Sean, if you're Sean M, I saw you turn around there, Sean Lawrence. But Sean M, if you're ready to go, we're ready for your evaluation, my friend.
Sure. So I thought the setup was pretty well made. The phrase "there's a reason for the Prime Directive" was repeated often, which I think added to the intensity of why it exists. The comment to stop influence of contamination. The comment about waiting for the civilizations to develop warp drive till they're ready for it was, I thought, a good point. For the in support of resolution round, there was a off topic, not necessarily off topic, but there was a comment made about the rescue mission that Worf, Data, and Picard broke out to save B4, which was in violation of the Prime Directive. And that seemed like it was a bit of a tangent that didn't really add to the argument. Otherwise, the arguments that were made that pre-warp civilizations can get hostile and use warp technology for malicious purposes, I thought was very well made. And for the final round, it more or less harkened back to the second round, but the comment that stuck was that pre-warp. Sorry, the Prime Directive is there to protect just not ourselves, but other cultures as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. 149. Okay. And the evaluator for Brian is Admiral Phil. Admiral Phil, is he? I think he might have dropped off.
I think he just dropped off.
Okay. So one of the things to note, in case he's trying to log back on, is that when it came to polling those debaters, it is incredibly rare to see that amount of people change in a debate, their sides, their true sides. It is very rare. So that was shocking to hear that. It's pretty exciting to get to see this. Oh, there he is. Admiral Phil is coming back in. It is pretty interesting to see